what's the difference between Gorosei hierarchy chip with Seraphim and Shirahoshi and Sea Kings? It could literally be that like Big Mom's soul fruit, right? And we're still seeing an example where Big Mom's not in the cards and Nami is able to command Zeus. That's literally a person commanding a mythical god. There needs to be some kind of like contractual decision making, and Zeus, Prometheus, like there's a reason why Big Mom's powers were all Greek gods, just like the ancient weapons, right?
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Redacted. Today we're going to be talking about the ancient weapons, both where they originated, what they were used for during the Void Century, or specifically maybe who was using them and why, and who controls them now and what their role is going to be, or pretty much everything about them. And of course, to help me break that down, I have none other than Parvision, who has been a little MIA recently with the content. I know he's been doing his reactions, but I'm glad he could spend some time here to talk about the ancient weapons today. So Par, how you doing?
I'm good. You hit me up at a good time. This is like literally perfect time. I mean, it's the beginning of the new year, so hopefully New Year means I could return back to content now that I have like a better schedule. Just had some like family health stuff, but yeah, I mean, I've been raring to go back to the content. You know more than most people about how much I have like just stored up, and I just never posted it. And like for 2 years, and there are still some of them are still relevant. Like we could go back in our Discord and probably see some fun ones. But yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the best topics to kind of like refresh on too, coming in to the chapter, coming back into like my own content, but also just as far as like a One Piece discussions go. So I'm excited to see, and thank you for asking me first. I don't know if this is the first Redacted of the year, but definitely glad to be here in 2025. So that's dope. And thank you guys for as Dak was saying, you guys asked me some questions specifically, so appreciate you guys for those questions, and looking forward to answering them.
Yeah, we will be getting to those in a minute. I guess that's a good segue to let you guys know that if you guys ever want to submit questions for my future guests, make sure you guys join the Discord. I don't have a channel made yet. I'm going to make a channel, though, strictly for redacted questions, where I'm going to post like, hey, in a few days, I'm doing this kind of discussion with this person. Let me know what you want to ask. Because I'm doing also chapter reviews every single chapter this year. So a lot of opportunities for questions if you guys want to do those, but we will get into those in just a second. And like you mentioned, Par, this is a good kind of topic to talk about for you to get back into content, and I think to start 2025 with, because I think between Elbaf potentially having Uranus, Blackbeard, or somebody potentially going to Wano for Pluton, maybe Fishman Island. We know that prophecy's coming at some point. And sorry everyone who just heard that sound on the Streamlabs. I did not fix that, my bad. But regardless, that was somebody subscribing, so shout out to that guy.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. It was a good reason, but the sound wasn't supposed to play. But anyway, yeah, so I also just dropped a video before this, so I think a lot of the viewers are coming from that, where I basically talked about why I think Vivi is definitely the one who can control Pluton. Because I think a lot of people have talked about Uranus because of the end of Alabasta, where she was, yelling at the sky and it started raining. And that actually is going to bring in that panel I was showing you a little bit earlier, Par, from chapter 1121, where we see Vegapunk talking about the ancient weapons, and he says, let's see, we know the weapons technology that sank the world's continents is still in use, and that power is out there. And while Vegapunk is saying that, we see Shirahoshi, Vivi, and Isa and Conus, but I would say Isa is probably more important. And the reason why Isa is more important is that panel, because she was a pretty instrumental character, I would say, honestly, in Skypiea. I think a lot of people forget about her, but she could hear, people all over the island just like an L did, but it's because she had like natural observation haki, right, which is really wild.
Can you scroll the panel up so that people could see? I think like your camera's blocking the visual of her, because another aspect of Isa that's really cool is she literally just looks like Luffy. Like she's drawn like very similar to Luffy. Hair, even everything. Like Oda covers it up, but like if Oda were to make a girl Luffy, it'd probably just be Isa.
There you can see her over there. She's in the middle too, right there with the little hat on.
I think like if you guys Google it, you guys can find like the Isa Luffy. There people have talked about that, but as far as what you're talking about, I agree with like these characters being the important cruxes of, or at least like potential, like very good potential for this to be. There's a reason why I would have put those panels together in the Vegapunk speech. Like in Egghead, last saga, we're starting off in a conversation about the ancient weapons. So if we're not looking at them first and foremost, I don't know where we'd be starting anyways, you know.
Yep. So then do you agree that Vivi controls Pluton then and Isa would control Uranus, or where are you at on that?
I mean, the whole thing about like the controlling aspect, right? Like
being it, you know.
Yeah, it's a hard like separation. We don't know the context about anything besides Poseidon, and Poseidon's the weird one where it's like they're ancient weapons. Obviously, we know the context that Oda plays with weapons. It's like it's anything that can cause harm. You know, a ship could be a weapon, or it could just be a ship. A face could be a weapon if you use it like Usopp did against Sugar, right? Like that's kind of when Oda introduced ancient weapons. I think it was like chapter 192, 193 with Miss Doublefinger. That was her name, right? Against Nami, she was describing what weapons were, and that was the chapter that Crocodile first introduced Pluton. It was that same layout. And she says even a face could be a weapon, and it's that kind of prefaces a lot of what we're talking about, because it keeps it vague. But Shirahoshi being Poseidon, and Poseidon being the controller of the Sea Kings, so are the Sea Kings are the ancient weapons, and she's the controller, but we call her Poseidon. Right. And then we go to Pluton. Pluton is sleeping under Wano, but someone controls it. So then maybe it's a similar thing where if all the Sea Kings were sleeping, right, then we could say like, oh, Poseidon's sleeping at the bottom of the ocean, and it could mean Shirahoshi and it could mean the Sea Kings. It could be both. Right. And so as we got more context about Pluton, I know like this is always a fun topic to talk about with Pluton because the mole theory, but also you had edited my Pluton theory.
I got questions on that in the question list here, so we're definitely talking about the cloud at some point.
Yeah. So like, for people that don't remember, just super brief, it's the cloud stuff and talking about how anti-Pluton and Pluton and just somewhere in the ancient weapon realm, clouds are going to be crazy. And like you mentioned, Vivi at the end of Alabasta was like, summoning the rain. And at the time, it's like, okay, if Pluton's a ship, and then later on we found out what Poseidon is, we kind of assume, okay, that might be Uranus then. But then we go later on and we're like, okay, maybe she controls Pluton or a version of Pluton or something like that. And then we add that the poneglyph at Alabasta was talking about Pluton. It's like, okay, so why would you put the poneglyph for Pluton there? What would be the reason to give the location there, right? And then on top of that, we have the location of Poseidon in Skypiea.
Which was originally at sea level, but
right. But and that would be in connection with Isa. So then we get a different kind of context too, because then it's like, we know that Shirahoshi and Poseidon are at the sea floor. So then why would you put the Poseidon thing with Skypiea? So then if we're saying that Isa's with Uranus per se, then we have a little bit more flip. We really do need that last puzzle piece of Uranus, even if it's vague, to finally get like a better picture. Yeah. But as far as like the controller setup, I think Vivi has been a lock for ancient weapons like since beginning of Vivi, right? Like Oda's pre-planned the Princess of Alabasta for a reason. Vivi's super important for the One Piece story, was considered a Nakama, like, you know what I mean? Shirahoshi, princess, like it's just like there's too many parallels to not consider Vivi in the conversation. You consider that Fisherman Island, Alabasta have more things similar than not. So then it's like, all right. And then now you add the I think the greatest probably example that in this conversation at least that a lot of people overlook, but people bring it up in other contexts, is the fact that Emu wants Vivi, and that the Nefertiti family, or Nefertari family is super ingrained in not just like celestial dragon stuff in the world, like just throughout everything, you know what I mean? So like, what mistake did they do? What power did they have? You know, like that sounds like an ancient weapon did something messed up, right? So then, you know, so Lily probably had it. And
yeah, so
as far as the controlling thing, I think the one unique take that I had a long time ago, but I never like had the time to make a video on, was that if like the way that Vegapunk described it was like Joy Boy had passed it down, and that's something that like we also don't know the context of like, what does it mean to pass down? Are we talking about wheels? Are we talking about devil fruits? Are we talking about something else? What are we, or is just preserving it like Emeth was, or like what's going on with Pluton? How did he pass it down? Is it just having kids? Like, did Joy Boy just have a harem with all these, you know, like, is it that? We don't know. But there's the one thing that kind of I feel like I talked a lot about was everything that Vegapunk did seemed to have mirrored a lot of what the Ancient Kingdom did, to the point like the Sea Kings and the Sea Beasts, like the control over them. At a certain point, Lilith was just mini Shirahoshi. And the way they were able to facilitate like an army of Kumas, or the Seraphim was the command chip. And so that's the thing that I think might be ingrained with the ancient weapons, is some form of like that hierarchy chip that exists within. I don't know if it's like a similar thing with like Bonnie. Like Bonnie, I'm not saying Kuma's that cracked, but like an army of Kumas is kind of insane, like really insane. If you just had like an ancient kingdom level Kuma and you gave a little girl that power, and that little girl was the royal family, I think it sounds a lot like Shirahoshi right now. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like the only thing that I'm like, okay, if we're talking about controllers, if we're talking about like controlling like a population or controlling some sort of thing specifically, I think the hierarchy chip, some form of ancient kingdom version of that, is probably ingrained here, and it's lineage factor based, something that like just a little step beyond what Vegapunk got, you know, so something like that.
Yeah. So that was actually a question I was going to get to, was about, you know, like how is that passed through lineage factor, assuming that works for all of them, right? And I think a big thing that we could tackle that would maybe help that answer, because I did bring this up in a video that was like from like a year and a half ago, where if we assume that every ancient weapon is a living creature, right? If we assume, you know, the Sea Kings are obviously alive, and then if we assume Pluton is a mole, for example, or keeping it on brand mole here, or a crab. I've seen a solid crab theory on it, because a crab went through the hole that the mole made, so there could be a combo deal. And then if we assume that Uranus is also a living thing, my theory has been that a dragon or something will hatch from Roger's egg, and it'll be something like that. And if they are all alive, then I think it could tie to something relating to Tama's devil fruit power. Because like her power let her control beasts or whatever, right? And I'm wondering if I don't know if like it's that fruit's awakening, or if however devil fruits are made, were they able to like tap into a similar thing? Was there like a zone fruit that did the same thing in the past, that was like the beast tamer fruit, or some crazy stuff like a Pokemon trainer fruit? I don't know. And because, like you said, I agree that the whole Kuma thing, it could be kind of like a foreshadow, a microcosm of how it works, right? We kind of saw like, well, like not Kuma, but I guess the Mark IIIs, right? Because they're like these really powerful things that can shoot these lasers and destroy, you know, probably a whole island. I mean, that's what Buster Calls do, and they're like a big part of the Buster Call, it feels like. And so, you know, I agree with that whole parallel, but it's kind of like, well, authority chips, like what's going to be better than that? It's like, well, if you can have some, you know, we don't know how devil fruits are made, but some like will-based thing, and we know, you know, Vegapunk mentioned with Boa how like whenever that, like the green blood, remember how like from Boa to S Snake, some of like the personality carried through the, like, well, I don't know if it's the green blood or the cloning, but one of the two, right? I mean, they have, you know, it's almost the same person recreated because of that, right? Same powers and everything. So I'm wondering, kind of like that situation, could it be that the original person who had that fruit, you know, like their descendants somehow, like I don't know how it would all work, but they're related to like people that were granted the ability to control them, and it passed down through some way. Like, I don't know how it would skip generations, but I think something like that. And again, I don't think it's just her fruit, but I don't know. Are they tapping into like underworld related stuff to get to these powers, and are they able to, you know, is there just a better version of her fruit? You know, we've seen that before. So
yeah,
that's what I think. If they're all alive, I think something like that. Because then, like you said, it's like how Tama had these giant creatures that would just listen to her, right? It's like we kind of saw like a baby version of it. So
yeah, I mean, another I think like it's we didn't fully address it in Egghead, but when it came to how the hierarchy chips worked, or what Bonnie had, like, that wasn't necessarily a hierarchy chip. I think Vegapunk specifically said anything that looked like Kuma that he made is like under her control, which that is a very interesting context to give, because it separates it from the hierarchy chip. He didn't say that you put a hierarchy.
I thought he said that she's the highest, and he just didn't tell anybody. I thought that was the breakdown. I could have swore.
Yeah, he said like for those, but then like she can't control the seraphims, right? Like that was the
I think it's just the Mark III. I thought.
Yeah, and Kuma himself, right? Like,
I don't think so. I'm gonna see if I can find it. I'm gonna try pulling it up real quick.
Like it is interesting because it's like I feel like if there was a time to be a little bit more transparent about some things, I feel like that was like the Egghead could have done a little bit more. On another front, we had an example too with which I'm assuming we're gonna get later on, with how the Gorosei work with the hierarchy chips. Because if Bonnie being higher, that's separate. What I mean is more like, what did Vegapunk do to give the Gorosei hierarchy over the seraphims? And what I mean by that is, does Bon Clay encountering Devon just transforming straight up into him, does that just like, is it just could like Nami, I don't know who, Usopp, can Usopp just mimic his voice and then it's so like perfectly mimicked that it works? Or do you need like a devil fruit empowered mimicry to then just do that? Is it that simple?
Like,
is it
does
just
Devin
like,
work straight up, or
yeah,
like, is it, or are they gonna know it's a different voice, like even if it sounds the same? Because we've seen, you know, like I can't hear their voice anymore, and they obviously don't mean just talking, right? It's like your will or whatever.
Right, and then that's where it comes into Momonosuke. Momonosuke also should be in this conversation because he literally demonstrated the ability to command Zunisha, who had some sort of like contract, it seemed like, with specifically Momo. Even though Luffy could hear, Luffy couldn't speak, and like or command or whatever. Like Zunisha was like, I don't hear you. Like you're just Monkey D. Luffy. Who are you? This is Momonosuke. This is Kozuki. This is Kozuki blood. But the thing is, Odin didn't work. So like I've talked about this in a past video and some streams. It almost seemed like the Amatsuki blood was the more important factor there. Because if Odin wasn't the one who was able to do it, then what's the difference between Odin and Momo? It's I mean, we could say, I guess, Kaido's fruit like is there too. Like maybe Kaido, the king of beasts, like his fruit is involved. So like Momo's dragon. No, but like the voice of that would be wild. But I only brought that up because you said the S snake thing and how Oda did make it a little bit confusing, because like you want to say it's just lineage factor stuff that like Boa has a thing, but like.
But she also has the same fruit. It's like doubled up. Yeah, you know.
Yeah,
so
and also she's not like, she wasn't like born loving Luffy. She like developed that later, and it would also imply that like Vegapunk cloned her after, like got her DNA after she started liking Luffy, which we don't even know about that either. But all that aside, is Momonosuke, voice of all things, and like voice of all things. It seems like the world, not the ancient kingdom version of what we're talking about, where like what is the hierarchy that allows them to command these computerized chips what is the organic slash magical slash devil fruit version of these Vegapunk creations that exist in the world government, that is within the Sea Kings, within Zunisha, that creates this contract, and then what voice is required for that? Because now it seems like there is like hereditary almost multiple Shirahoshi Momo that lines up with a giant beast, and Voice of All Things is kind of like one of those weird things, because we have like Isa again, another one who actually like Oda's debut of Voice of All Things essentially, or like a version of that, mantra, observation haki, whatever you want to have, and that's significant because that means that like whatever Oda showed there, that's the blueprint essentially. That's what Oda's starting point is, and that means that the ending point is going to be reminiscent of what we see. Isa, boom, Isa, Momo, Shirahoshi. Why are they all the same? I mean, like there's all little kids. They all awaken powers that like work on animals, hear dying things, observation haki. But we don't know like how Voice of All Things works, or like who is restricted. Like Oda is doing this interesting thing with expanding how the D-clan stuff is like. Is it just given? Is it just like a group of people? Are they actually family? Like what's with the D-clan? Because you'd want to think that it's D-clan specific, but then it's not. So like unless the Kozuki and Shirahoshi are also, and they could be. It could all just be Joy Boy descendants. I don't know if people would like that. But it feels like Voice of All Things is probably like the missing, not the missing piece, it's not missing, but the extension of what we're talking about from Tama. But not just Tama's is probably the more prevalent version, but there's actually another exceptional example in Onigashima, which was Big Mom. Big Mom has the command over all the homies, and how did Law shut that down? He's silence. Boom. Very similar thing. And Big Mom's like, yo, I can't command my homies without my voice. Like, and that's how powerful her voice was. And that's not Voice of All Things. We're not talking about like ancient, but it kind of is like ancient weapon level stuff. Like the homies were kind of that level.
A little bit. You go give a ship like a really powerful soul or something, then you're talking some crazy Pluton talk.
Yeah, and besides Momo, all women, right? Like Big Mom, Tama, Isa, Shirahoshi, possibly Vivi. You know what I mean? Like the Oda's doing, like the parallels don't write themselves. Oda wrote them in there. Right?
Absolutely.
I didn't make this up. Like Tama and Big Mom had the whole like connection thing too.
Exactly.
Oda connected them. So.
And they even showed, like, I would say it was almost like they were one and the same in a way, where like they acted the same, right? Like they became friends when she was Olin. So it kind of gave that feeling of like, oh, okay, like Big Mom is a lot different than we think. And I think we kind of knew that from like whenever like her flashback, right? We knew she was nice, but she was like killing the bear because she wanted the bear and the wolf to be friends. And so there's just like, it's like, okay, she has a good intention, she's just not doing it the right way kind of thing. And so I think kind of tying that to Tama, like you just said, I think is really interesting because, they like Big Mom could give life to things and control them, and Tama was able to control things that were already given life before, right? Like it's not like she could go control an inanimate object. She can only do it to animate ones, and Big Mom seems to be the opposite, right? She has to give souls like inanimate things. I mean, she can eat the soul herself, but that's a totally different ballgame than what we're talking about. And so that's an interesting parallel. And not that we're gonna like get into this in this discussion, maybe in a future one. But I just wanted to mention it while we're on the topic. I need Big Mom to show up to Elbaf, and I need Mother Carmel to become relevant, and I need that fruit to become way more relevant and learn all about that. That has to happen. If that doesn't, Oda's tripping. I don't know what else to say.
I mean, the natural segue, the reason why I bring Big Mom up in the conversation is her power is kind of literally the it could just be the answer to the thing that we're missing. what's the difference between Gorosei hierarchy chip with Seraphim and Shirahoshi and Sea Kings? It could literally be that like Big Mom's soul fruit, right? You give like if there's homies or souls inside of the ship that's Pluton or whatever Uranus is or whatever the Sea Kings are, because they clearly have souls. And then you just give like a command, right? We literally saw, and we're still seeing an example where Big Mom's not in the cards and Nami is able to command Zeus, right? That's literally a person commanding a mythical god, right? Like Nami is command, and what happens if Nami goes, okay, Zeus, you have to go follow XYZ, right? Does Zeus follow? What happens if Zeus is given a command by Big Mom? Like, oh, you have to go follow Katakuri. Is Zeus gonna break that? I don't think so, right? There needs to be some kind of like contractual decision making, and Zeus, Prometheus, like there's a reason why Big Mom's powers were all Greek gods, just like the ancient weapons, right? So I feel like that's kind of why Oda did the naming scheme, why the powers felt kind of, there's like a bridge there, and then we're bringing up Big Mom, and Big Mom's flashback is relevant to where we're at right now. So I feel like 100% we're about to get like the bridge. We're about to get the bridge 100%.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying there, because I think with, you mentioned, Big Mom's powers maybe being kind of like a baby version, an introduction to the ancient weapons, and you brought up Nami's part in this. She's controlling the cloud now, and as we've seen, that cloud has given her a lot more giant lightning strike abilities, right? She's able to do a lot more damage than before. And so I actually want to parlay that into your cloud theory, your Pluton cloud theory, because something that I want to push a little bit, and I don't know if this is necessarily how it'll end up, but I think everything you said could be easily applied to Uranus, and I may have even said this whenever you did the video, because obviously the sky and all that kind of stuff. But you look at what happened to Lelucia, and while I don't think that's Uranus, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit, because one of the questions is about that. But I guess I would just say, like, your cloud idea, like, you think about Lelucia, like a cloud kind of like popped up out of nowhere, dropped these giant beams and left. It's like, did the Mother Flame just power up that cloud you were talking about, and they just drop some giant lightning strikes? And because you're going back to Nami, it's like, is that what we're seeing? Is Nami's just like a baby version of that bigger one that's been used? And then to build onto that even more, you think about Enel in Skypiea, right? So I'm actually working on a Uranus video that ties to the Arc Maxim. It's not all about it, but that's it ties to it in space and Burka and all sorts of stuff. But remember, the Arc Maxim was able to make storm clouds to power up Enel even further, right? Like that, I forget exactly. Like Enel powered it, but it also made clouds or whatever, right? So like it made his Raigo bigger, and that's how like Luffy jumped into the cloud and spun the golden ball around and like discharged it and all that kind of stuff. But you think about how he was using that like to wipe out islands, right? He was making these giant clouds, and the Raigo, like he didn't successfully do it during the arc, but we did see him shoot like a mini blast. I mean, it was giant, but mini compared to destroying Skypiea, and it like made a hole in the White Sea, just like we see in the Blue Sea with whatever Emu's using. So I guess I'm just curious on your thoughts on all that. Just and like I said, we'll get into specifically the Uranus and Lelucia stuff in a second, but just, I don't know. What do you think about the cloud? Are you still on the cloud theory? You think that can come back, or what? Where you at?
I mean, like, this is probably one of my regret's a tough word, but in my hiatus, one of the videos that I wanted to get out the most. It's actually the video. Like, I had a few shorts to like hype up the video, and like the script is done. I think I was like halfway through editing, and recording and stuff, and it was about how, at the end of Egghead, like literally, not even just the end of Egghead, like even when I delayed it, we got to the start of Elbath, and the conversation about clouds like 10x, 100x. It like literally. Vegapunk literally was just like, yo, post-mortem, the things we gotta save, Cloud Machine. Like, I was like, all right, guys, if that doesn't, there was so many things on Egghead for him to save, and he singled, I mean, Mother Flame, obviously, himself, obviously, cloud machine. How, like that was, and then he floated away. Like he's just like, yep, peace, guys, on a cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, this is literally what we're talking about. And then we add the context of his message, which was the whole, hey, the world's sinking. The water levels are rising. How do we survive this? Clouds. Not only that, in the Kuma flashback, this is actually what started the first where I started the script, and then it got delayed, and then kept on building up. Was the Kuma flashback, because Vegapunk had told us in his in Kuma's flashback that the plans he had for Egghead were his plans always. His plans at Punk Hazard was always to make the cloud, always to float his brain. That was always the plan. That was before he had satellites. That was before anything. He told I forget who he told. What's her face? Was it Stussy? No, was it Stussy? I forget who it was. Yeah, I think it was Stussy. He told someone, it's like someone said, wow, like, you built so much in so little time on Egghead. And he's like, well, this was always the plan at Punk Hazard too. So he kind of had a jump start on that. And that should say, like, yo, the clouds are important, not just for Void Century and surviving it. The clouds are also important. We look at one of the most magnificent settings in pre-time skip, Skypiea. We talk about Elbaf, introduction to Elbaf. They're just pulling out clouds out of their ass at this point. Like, it's not even like we knew that there was gonna be clouds, but they're like, no, we're flying on clouds. Where the ships are on clouds. The ship cloud. They have clouds that like literally fly on ships, not dragons, just cloud ships. Which is like, I guess, like, the premise of that video was like, hey, we have island clouds, we have sea clouds. What about boat clouds? That was kind of the idea behind that video. And at the time, Pluton being a boat, and my idea at the time was like, okay, I think I very blatantly said this, was that I think me and you had been on the same page for most of this, was that the world was going to be flooded. There was a lot of context clues, but way before Vegapunk had said it. And one of the ways to survive a flooding is in the sky. And so the cloud thing, I was like, okay, well, if they had to be in the sky and they needed ships, ship cloud. And so Pluton made sense there. Then we got the Lucia thing. And at the time,
and real quick, I don't want to cut you off too much, but I just want to say, I don't think we said this earlier, but just because people are probably wondering what picture I just brought up. Part of Par's theory, or a big part of it, is that this is tied to the Emperor Cloud. And so that's what the picture is that I just pulled up. You guys probably may not even remember what the Emperor Cloud is, because it was kind of a niche thing mentioned in Jaya, right? I think. And so just FYI, this is an actual thing in One Piece, the Emperor Cloud. And do you remember exactly what like the situation is with it, Par? Like, hasn't it like been around for a long time, or it's really dense or something like that?
Yeah, so as far as the Emperor Cloud goes, we don't know like specifics. All we know were the theories that Nolan gave us, and his theories were like sort of wrong, sort of right, like kind of thing. Like it was enough to get the Straw Hats up to the Emperor Cloud. But what the premise of the Emperor Cloud was that the Emperor Cloud is a fossilized cloud that does not rain. It's so dense that it does not give off rain, which we found out later. The Pyrobloin offsets its ability to like create have salt and moisture, so it doesn't, I don't know, it just creates an environment where rain doesn't happen. And so when the Straw Hats first encountered it, it was with the Masira pirates, and it just turned darkness, and that's when they saw the shadows, that they were with the giant turtle to jog some of you guys' memories, and they freaked out. It turned into complete darkness. That complete darkness is why I originally was associating it with Pluton, because Pluton being a name for underworld, hell, a place of darkness, not night, daytime, and this cloud would create a complete darkness. And so yeah, I mean, you guys can go watch that last that I saw some recent comments on it too. People are like going back to that video, and I think it's a
great theory with what you're saying recently with all the cloud hype, right? Like even if people don't think it's Pluton, which like you and I have talked about this, I think that's like the mark of a great video, is like, even if you don't agree with like the final like synthesis of everything, you're gonna leave that video like, all right, I forgot the Emperor Cloud was even a thing. That is crazy that exists. Like, this thing has to be relevant. And like, you think about all the parallels, like, it's kind of one of those mind-blowing things whenever you go look back on it. So
and something I didn't it's hard to say that I didn't understand at the time. I still don't understand it, but like, it could just be Oda writing, it could just be made up. But the Emperor Cloud kind of has like a mind of its own. It, like, when you really think about it, because Nolan had a theory about the Knockup stream. The idea was that the Knockup stream brings you up to possibly Skypiea, possibly whatever, but like, the connection of the cloud and the Knockup stream, those weren't connected. If you guys remember, Usopp had a crash out moment. He's like, what do you mean we could just go up into the sky and fall back down? And he was basically like, you have to, it's a gamble, but you gotta hope that the things line up. And that implies that they're not connected. And so, like, it's really weird, because if you guys remember the first Knockup streams, when Skypiea shot up into the thing, into the sky, there was no nighttime. When Skypiea or Jaya originally got shot up into the sky, there was no darkness over them. It almost sounds like the Knockup stream shot it up, and the Emperor Khan just happened to conveniently catch Jaya, which is like wild.
Well, it
right?
could be like on a cycle, right? Like, it could be just that it was timed up so that every year now, like, it happens every year, or it happens every so often, but it happens on a cycle where, like,
every time the Knockup stream happens, five times a month, and that's where it was really funny. I brought up in a previous video. It wasn't this one, but they were kind of brother sister videos. I think I was editing that one while you were doing the Pluton one for me, and so I could get it out in a timely manner. Appreciate you for that, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
The fact that we're still talking about it, is a great thing.
It's crazy that was over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
It was that when Nolan was there on Jaya with Kalgara never mentioned Knockup streams, which just tells you how like new the Knockup streams were to them. Like, they never experienced it, and that first one that shot up in the sky, that was like pinpoint accuracy, whatever. And that's why I was like, okay, the Knockup streams also like super sus that this happened right after a reverie. And that video was saying how, like, yo, the Knockup stream might have been a Gorosei thing. And then I was saying, like, it wouldn't be surprised if another island gets like blasted out. And then Leloucia happened like probably like 3 months after I said that. And then the cloud thing lined up, and I was like, what is happening with this? Because like with Jaya, it was blast moves an island, and then there's a cloud there, and then Leloucia was a cloud there, and then the island's gone, and we don't know the context. Gaping hole, different scenarios, but the point is that getting back to the topic of that cloud, and you saying, like, thinking it's relevant, 100,000%, the Emperor Cloud, I have a lot more on that, which is like some of the things I was alluding to before the call. But like, as far as like the ship and Uranus and Pluton and Uranus, like, I don't even know where I'm at with that. Like, here's like something I never even mentioned in that video about the ship thing. I never even thought about this, but like, when you think about Skypiea or the Emperor Cloud, and you think about the giant jack almost seems like a mast. Like a mast for this cloud and I'm like, dang, like, I should never mention that in the video that was talking about how this thing could just be a giant ship that's like floating in the sky carrying everything. And it's just like, dang, like, that really was like a mast, and Luffy had to like take it down. And that could be symbolic for many, many reasons. I mean, giant jack, and now we're in Elbaf with a giant tree, right. And then
which there are multiple Adam trees, which is insane, but that's probably a whole other discussion. But yeah,
to tie in Enel, which had like Thor powers, which also ties to Elbaf, and all that. Various, whether he's showing up or a power similar to him or references to him, or like it's a setup for 100%. I feel like Enel's gonna come back. It's the question is like when. As far as the differentiation between Pluton, because like the mole, and Uranus and the clouds, it's kind of like it's just like I'm so up in the air with it that I don't even know. I think after we that video was released, the exact thing that you said was like it could be Uranus, but you were on the whole thing that all the ancient weapons are animals,
Right.
and you were kind of like, I think that at minimum this is directly related to ancient weapons. At maximum,
it could be the ship, right? Like Uranus's ship portion, like how Poseidon has the Ark Noah. Now, I think that could also be the Arc Maxim, but remember, the Arc Maxim makes clouds. So it's like, how far away are we from the answer, really? You know what I mean? Like, is the Arc Maxim just like a newer version of the Emperor Cloud in a way? Where, like, I know they obviously operate differently, but just in terms of, like, for Enel's purposes, right? For making clouds to make his power stronger, maybe he could have just used the Emperor Cloud the entire time, and it would have been better than the Arc Maxim, right?
And then with the Arc Maxim, it's another one of those like very confusing, I think in the same vein as Vivi, because it's a ship. And you'd want to think it's a ship like Pluton, because it's described as a battleship.
Right.
And in that conversation that Crocodile had with Ms. Doublefinger to reference that thing, she said even a face could be a weapon. And if everyone recalls what the Arc Maxim has front and center is a giant face, which like I think even more mysterious than Enel, even more mysterious than Vivi, even more mysterious than Uranus and whatever, is where did the blueprints of Arc Maxim like come from? You know what I mean? Like that's the other.
That is the focus of my next Uranus video.
Right, exactly. That's what it is. It's like
I'll say this much. I'll say this much, Par, because I think you'll know where I'm going with it already. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we know because of Poseidon that there's 3 parts to it, at least for hers. Now, I think a lot of people assume that the template is roughly the same for the others, but we'll see. But if we assume it is, then Uranus should have like a controller, like a beast form, right? Like how the Sea Kings, right? There should be like a Sea King beast equivalent, and then also a ship component. And remember, there were also 3 sky races that came down from the moon, and they also went to 3 different places. And one, the Skypians, have Isa, who I think might control them. The other ones, the Shandians, had this giant snake thing that they worshipped. Remember? And then we're like, well, the Birkins, what's up with them? Well, they got deleted. Well, what have we seen recently in the story that happens to like what kind of civilizations tend to get erased? It's either high-tech civilizations, right? Like the Ancient Kingdom / Egghead was obviously attacked because like he advanced too far, and obviously a lot of that was poneglyph related. But I'm wondering, like, with Enel destroying it, but also having the Arc Maxim, like, is there a big story there behind Burka's like cultural stuff, like their ties to the Moon City and how he got those? Like, were they meant to protect it because of the Uranus legends? I think there's a lot of potential there. I don't want to give away all the pieces.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, there's something I could have brought up to derail us, but in that same vein, I have like a conversation of a different character that I think should be in this conversation given what she is doing. We haven't like mentioned her in the right, but we have talked about her. But I won't give away that. But I have
okay.
But the as far as like what you're saying, the 3 components, like it's interesting you say that too, because it's like with Pluton it's the same thing, allegedly at least, because Zunisha is, I guess, the beast component that like can unleash the ancient weapon component that's sleeping. So it's like,
I mean, I'm feeling like Zunisha is just a separate thing,
and that's what's weird about it, because like Zunisha feels like in the conversation, Momo and Zunisha are like right there. And it could be that they're just dropout ancient weapons.
There you go. Okay, I was about to say, look, no, I mean, maybe a little bit of disrespect to Zunisha, but like Jack almost took care. Zunisha can't do nothing,
I mean, if you want to play that game though, because then we could say like, oh, like Vanderdecken and Hody almost took out Poseidon, right?
Well, yeah,
like,
I mean, she's not that strong by herself. She needs the Sea
Kings,
right?
So that, yeah, but like, I know what you're saying, because like
Zunisha would be like the brawn. So I'm like, well, if the brawn is getting cooked, that easy.
And so like the reason why I was referencing that is because Poseidon also has the same 3 kind of components. It's the controller, it's the beast, Sea Kings, but then they also had the end goal of Noah. Because they were supposed to bring Noah, and Noah's this insane ship. So are these all just ships? Like, are all the ancient weapons ending with the ship. That's probably what it is. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
and we are gonna get right back to that, because that is I was literally waiting for a good segue to be like, all right, we are. Oh, sorry again for that noise, guys. I don't know how to turn it off, but people are subscribing and it's making a little noise. I'll figure that out next time. So I just set this scene up, but on the topic of kind of what's the purpose of the ancient weapons? Like, why were they made? What were they doing before the war started? Right? Like, why were these things invented? I think that is one of the biggest questions regarding the ancient weapons, and so we're going to save that for the very end, if that's all right. And because we're not like running out of time, but we're getting a little close, and I just want to make sure we have enough time for the comments, because that discussion on the ancient weapons purpose, that we could go on for hours and hours. So I think it'll be best to get these comments done, and then we'll get back to that really big question towards the end here. So we're gonna hop over to the comments, and again, if any of you guys are watching this and want to have your questions answered, it won't be guaranteed to be Parvision every time, but he's been on a couple times. He'll probably be on again. But I try to have somebody on, a new person pretty frequently. So if you guys have questions, make sure you join the Discord and keep an eye out for whenever I post about it. But first up, we literally have a question regarding what I just said for Kush from Kush Dade. So Kush, I had yours up first, but because of that segue, we're going to do yours last. I'm sorry, Kush, because that's the perfect segue. So if this is from Soulflake, I'm sorry that your name got truncated. That's because I was on Streamlabs whenever I saw the question.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, so whenever you get on Streamlabs, it'll go ... So that way, if I show my Discord during the video, you know what I mean, then they won't see everybody's name, right? So
I'm so glad you said. I've wondered what that was, and I never knew. And it just comes back and whatever. I'm like, whatever. It's
called truncated, which is such a crazy word, right?
That's good that they do that. I just didn't know. It'd be nice if they said.
And you can turn it off if you wanted, but I feel like nobody should do that.
I mean, I have streamer mode enabled, whatever, but it didn't used to do that. I don't think so. I feel like that was last year, 2 years ago. But I've had stream a decade, and I've never had.
I don't know. It's always done it for me since day one. That's how I know, because the very first day I was like, "What is happening?" Like I can't see anybody's name. I need to have their images memorized. I'm like, what the fuck do you want from me? It's crazy. But all right, Soulflake here, who's a member of the Laboon Union. That's what the Laboon emoji means. So they're on the good side. They want to know if it's possible to extract, or if it's possible to extract devil fruits from someone, like how Blackbeard did, presumably with Whitebeard, or at least he can cancel powers temporarily, right? Do you think it could be possible to extract the ability to control an ancient weapon, or conversely, do you think Blackbeard's power could also, kind of like we're talking about with this lineage stuff, could there be a way where he could also sap that power out from either just to stop them from controlling it, or to take it himself, or maybe another way to think of it, because we touched on it, do you think maybe they can't do that, but if you just copy their appearance, then if you're Devin, then will that let you? So what are your thoughts on that?
This is the hardest, I think, because then now we're talking about the parameters and we don't know what context we're talking about. And as far as the parameters go, I'm a gamer. I see you game, and I feel like I'm very game coded. I'm game balancing, and I want it to be balanced. And stories don't have to be. Oda can write the parameters however he wants. He could change. The thing is, we even in this conversation, we framed a lot of the other ancient weapons with Shirahoshi. It doesn't have to be that way. We'd like it to be that way, and Oda's the one to do a lot of parallels. But just even if with the parallels, the parameters won't have to necessarily be the same, right? And I think the context that we kind of are looking at is the ancient weapons are risky, very risky, easily controllable kind of scenario where Vanderdecken was a character that was literally trying to harness the power. And what was his plan? To marry Shirahoshi? Shirahoshi's all of a sudden just gonna get, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? When you think about the end game of his plan, it's even his end game didn't make sense, but One Piece logic, that meant marrying her, and somehow that means he gets the powers. I guess through coercion. We don't have to talk about all that. But
he's on my shit list, man. I've actually been thinking about doing a redacted video that's solely about all the characters that need to die by the end of One Piece, and it's Vanderdecken, Vasco Shot, Rodo. There's more, but you get the trend. They all need to go. All of them.
I had a video series in a similar vein too, but talking about like this controller situation, like Zunisha didn't know who the fuck Momo was. I'm sorry, like like this little kid comes on, oh my conquerors here. How do you know how did you figure that out? And it's like if you had Odin and Momo side by side, I'm listening to Odin. You know what I mean? And it's like, what differentiated their powers? And I think like those are the only things that we can go off of. And Oda can still change the parameters. But as far as what we're going with, what we know, I do think it's as simple as Bond Clay, and because Oda made those powers so insanely.
In Alabasta and Wano, which are such relevant arcs story-wise, like you have Alabasta, home of one of the original 20 kings, right, in the Nefertari family, and then Wano, the home place of the poneglyphs. You know what? It's like, okay, like you got, that's crazy, So and then, I agree.
And let's take a step back, right? Let's take a step back for straight up devil fruit power mimicry, right? Look at what Doflamingo did to King Riku. Like, there's ways to puppet situations. There's so many ways around it, with devil fruit powers, without devil fruit powers.
Moria's done the same thing, basically, right? Puppeting people. And also the girl in the latest chapter, which
what happens if you take Shirahoshi's shadow?
And I also want to bring this up. I just want your thoughts. Very random question, but I saw, I think 3 Day Trip brought this up. 3 Day very well. Yeah. I think it was 3 Day. 3 Day, if I'm wrong, well, you got the credit anyway, so, not the end of the world. Yeah. Do you think that girl, and this has nothing to do with ancient weapons, but just real quick, do you think that girl controlling, like, those bandages, could that be like Polly controlling the ropes? Do you think that's, like, the same logic?
I mean, listen. You know me.
I know you love the ropes. I know.
Like Polly was my poster child for There's something other than devil fruits, Haki. Beyond that, then now we have straight up magic, right? And if people want to say she's using magic to control the thing, listen, like Miss Golden Week, Polly. They were doing magic too then. I don't know what they don't have devil fruits and they don't have Haki, so then they're using magic.
And Miss Golden Week puts circles, right? Just like the symbol's like almost like a summoning circle, but just different, right? It's not exactly the pentagram, but
the way I dubbed it was Devil Seed powers. I'm still running with that. That's my.
I like it.
The thing is, these are powers outside of devil fruits, outside of conventional Haki. And in a large way, the ancient weapons are running off of some excessive form of observation Haki. Voice of all things is like observation Haki on crack with Conqueror's Haki or something. And so as far as these this like conjuring ropes or bandages or whatever it is, my frame of how I contextualize it has stayed consistent since the day one of my channel, and it has done me good. And Oda could put the labels on it. Me and him, where I'm understanding it the same way, we just calling it different. And he hasn't put a label on all of these things yet. I'm calling it Devil Seed powers because these are not Devil Fruit powers, but the way Vegapunk explained it is like people dreamed of having like an nth tier power that it's just like manifested. We don't know how or where they entered another dimension of whatever. It's like, all right, that's what Polly's doing. Yeah, Polly straight up conjured ropes that can carry giants. All right, that's some other dimensionally shit right there.
Like I'm almost wondering, because I think you've talked about it. Like, could it be Haki? Could it be Life Return? Right? Like, or a mix of the two? Are those like kind of one and the same, or like sister powers? Right?
Yes.
And going back to the ancient weapon idea, part of me wonders after we saw the Joy Boy rope Haki thing.
Yes.
Could it be possible that Joy Boy's Haki was just like so good that he straight up like went to the Sea Kings and like used the Haki and was like not that he said this, but just with the way powers work, he's like, all right, in the future, this girl's gonna get born, and you're gonna listen to her, and then that's just the end of it, And like,
no, straight up, no. See, this is that's why I like talking with you, because you're okay with these crackhead versions. I think crackhead very,
nicely
not to
or acceptably. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. I'm saying that because people would say that about me. If I had said what you just said, back when these ideas existed like 2 or 3 years ago on those videos, people like come on, Haki doesn't do that. And I'm like, I'm straight up thinking like, yeah, what are we talking about? The hierarchy chip, right? If I wanted to give an example that exists in the story of a command chip, a command order that exists without science, it's Conqueror's Haki.
We've seen Luffy straight do up it 100 times with animals. Like this,
and the animals stop. No words, nothing. Now he'll just look at them, chill out, and they're like chill. You know what I mean?
When he met Loki, remember all those giant monsters? They start like laughing when Luffy's there, and Loki's like, "What the hell? Like, how did you? Who are you? You know?" Yeah. And think about those animals got compared to the Gorosei. Like the giants were like, "Oh, this reminds me of the things we see." It's like these things got to be monstrous. Like what? You know? And Luffy's just like immediately, controlling them. And you also look at what's his name? Like Moo or whatever the thing was in Arlong Park, right? The cow sea beast thing. And I mean, there's a million examples. Even Shanks in Chapter 1, right? With Lord of the Coast, get out of here. So like, yeah.
As far as like what Polly, like I think like an example that I use to bridge the gap in the times, like this is before magic was a thing in One Piece. I'm saying that again, not from my perspective, from other people's perspective. Before we knew what Vegapunk's explanation, which again, words have been said on the channel that's very similar to Vegapunk, but the bridge that I was using was that there's like nth tiers of each of the Hakis that we just don't know. And one of my favorite examples is the soonest one that we got, which is Wi-Fi Haki. I called it Mind Rope. People call him Wi-Fi Haki. I described an ability where you could send someone and like literally telepathically connect, and Shanks could read it, a physical extension, and took months until like the anime for people to like, oh no, he was talking to him. They were having a conversation. There was what is this, guys? Are we giving Shanks another power, or are we gonna use like the film Red example where he has insane conquerors, insane observation Haki to the point where he could cancel observation Haki, and that's something we still haven't seen yet. And so the version with like the bandages and poly that I would use is the nth tier of like armament, which is what we're seeing is like you can imbue objects with it, and that's like Luffy and Zoro literally got like beginners training on this. What happens when you're Joy Boy level? Can you just create shit? You know what I mean? Like, are we just making stuff? Like, and then if you're just making stuff, isn't that not what Devil Fruit powers like Paramecia's are? And then you can have like a separation of what these Zoans, Paramecia's, Logias, like where one's life return, one's like armament Haki, like they literally exact. Oh, my camera cut out. That's super weird. Let me try to bring that up before.
All good.
Should be
you're good. Okay.
I don't know. Sorry about that. But
all good.
But yeah, that's kind of where from the beginning, like go back to again. I'm not advising you guys to watch my old videos because I can't watch them fully. Maybe you guys can stomach them, but if you watch them, at least the bullet points of it, it's essentially everything I just stated just now, and it makes so much more sense with all the like the exhibit A through Z that we've gotten since then. It's insane what Oda has given to for that agenda. And so as far as the bandages girl, it's I'm on the boat. I don't think it's a devil fruit. I think a lot of people are on that boat because it's Celestial Dragon stuff, Holy Knight stuff. And if it's not devil fruits, then we're talking about the things that Paulie has. And if it's the things that Paulie has, then it's fourth Haki's Devil Seed. It's in that conversation for sure, easy.
Yep. I'm with you. It's not going to be a devil fruit. That'd be too lame. I think Oda's ready to diversify. You know what I mean? Like we see this dark magic stuff. Like it's time to bring in some new like power systems or to explain further the power systems we already have, right? Like you're talking about life return and Haki. Like if we find out that like maybe devil fruits were made because somebody's Haki was so strong that they could put their imagination into a edible thing. Like like who knows? Seriously, by the end of this. And also you mentioned the Wi-Fi Haki a lot, and one more thing that I was curious about, which I know we're running out of time, but I want to get your thoughts. Do you think what Emu did to Saturn is essentially Wi-Fi Haki round 2? Because it was very similar, right? Because they were like talking while it was happening.
Yeah, emus. I would, if I were to give I would say yes, but a mirror. I would say, this goes back to Shadow's theory. Essentially, if we look at Luffy and Moria, right? Moria is able to do the Gomu thing through shadows. It was this similar thing via different mechanism. Theoretically, he could do that with anything. He could literally morph your shadow theoretically and do a lot of crazy stuff. I feel like that is what Emu is doing. So, and like whatever Emu can do, Luffy can do. Whatever Emu can do, Joy Boy did. But it's the opposite mechanism, and I think that's like cliche to say, but it's a yin and yang type of thing. Joy Boy had a positive route of doing it, and Emo has like a negative route. Both have their downfalls in different ways. Rayleigh gave Luffy the warning, you gotta be careful with how you use your conquers. You can overwhelm the people around you, right? If you take that to the nth tier, and we talked about the animals all happy, laughing, whatever, if Luffy's conquerors is doing that, or Joy Boy when he's in Nika's form is creating laughter in all the people, if he's not in control of that and it's uncontrolled, then you get unrelenting smile fruit situation where everyone's just unable to express emotions other than happiness, and that in itself is a curse, right? And we look at the more obvious curse that like Brook went through, or the people on Thriller Bark, and it could be that that's similar to what the Gorosei are exhibiting, where in a sense that, I'm not saying it's like one-to-one, but there's a reason why Oda debuted Moria the way he did, emphasizes fruit the way he did, the Nightmare Luffy the way he did, so many examples, losing to Kaido, etc. But the what's it called? Damn, I forgot. It was the fact that like his denizens were kind of restricted. His denizens they had to live within the cloud, because if they didn't, the sunlight would hit them, and that would like greatly restrict most of everybody. And so in that way, like there might be like an extended version of that for Emu. I know a lot of people are saying like maybe it's Sunlight Tree Eve related, maybe it's Mare Joie related, maybe it's Redline related. We don't necessarily know. I'm sure it's more cracked for the Holy Knights, more cracked for the Gorosei. It's not as restricted. But it could be that the Gorosei and like Absalom and like those other ones, because the Absalom and Dr. Hogback and Perona, they weren't in the same vein as the zombies, but they had a similar like vice grip on them a little bit, besides Dr. Hogback. But look, I think Dr. Hogback, did he want to jump ships? I feel like he wanted to jump ships on Moria, which is interesting because he was the doctor on Moria's ship. That's a whole separate conversation. I think at the end when he saw like shit was gonna hit the fan, I forget if Hogback was like, oh, like peace out guys, but I'm forgetting the full scope of all that. But going back to it is Wi-Fi Haki, yes, but like maybe it's more like Bluetooth. You know what I mean? Like there's Wi-Fi and then there's Bluetooth. You know? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because I felt there was like some similarities for sure. You know, it's just like he like fell down to his knees, you know, in the Walmart parking lot, and just, you know, you even saw like and he had like there was like souls like leaving his body, and you could like see like smiley face. That's like what it looked like, and it was very ominous. I don't know. It felt like, wow, okay, this is even better than Shanks's. It's similar but like scarier, you know. So I'm in a similar boat. And speaking of boats, I guess, potentially, Birch brought up, can't wait for Ancient Weapons Docking 3. So this wasn't really a question, but I thought it was funny and maybe something to bring up because, you know, we've seen docking in the story before. The Sunny right now, of course, has like a few different docking mechanisms that works in a little bit different than what we're thinking of Thriller Bark. But I highly doubt the Ancient Weapons will literally dock. But this kind of, you know, I guess is made a little bit of a preview maybe for the question about like their origin. But I guess I'm just kind of thinking like were they meant to like be in unison? Do you think, like work together for a common thing, or do you think they were like made in isolation, or another option is like, what if Poseidon always was on Earth, and like what if Pluton was originally like from a different planet or something? You know, like I don't know, some crazy stuff like. Like, were they all meant, or were they all created by like the same group, or do you think like for the purpose of being together, or do you think they're just three separate entities that just influence the world at some point, like in their own ways? You know what I mean?
I think they're all made in a group. In unison is a different conversation. In synergy is also an interesting one, because you'd like to think it's like a rock paper scissors. One can stop the other, and the other can stop the other, and they're all a balance, just like how Oda did like the three balances that sort of wasn't really three balances because there was lopsided, but and then at the end of the day, the Yonkos are also like in the pockets of the Gorosei to a certain extent. So
for sure.
With the ancient weapons, something that like I guess like we haven't talked about per se, but you brought up the Thousand Sunny because of the docking stuff. And I think like what's interesting is that whole ship conversation again, because when you're saying ancient weapon docking, now my question is, okay, so then is Shirahoshi the ancient weapon, or is she the controller of the ancient weapon? Are we just referring to her as the ancient weapon because like without her you can't use the ancient weapon? Because it seems like her role, like at the end stage of her role, it's either telling the Sea Kings to sink the planet through like hitting the red line or whatever, or it's to carry the Noah because that's what their goal was. And then you have Pluton, it's also a ship. You have like the Battle Frankies that were like, that's another heavily prefaced ancient weapon backstory. I mean, all of the backstory is kind of ancient weapon related, but like this one's ancient weapon related, and through multiple frames of reference, given that Tom was a holder of the blueprints, given that Tom was a part of the guild, the ancient shipwrights that had a hand in making them, in the sense that his direct like lore that he told Tom was that they made Pluton and they also made anti-Pluton, and we don't know the scope of that either, if it's one and the same or if they're opposites or whatever, what that even means. But the fact that they made a Pluton and an anti-Pluton, it feels like maybe they did make other ones, and maybe it's just like the ancient shipwrights were involved with like ancient I don't know, like other things, you know what I mean? I can't think of the other examples, but ancient scientists, ancient whatever, scholars, I don't know, but like the point is that like the Shirahoshi, if we're talking about ancient weapon docking, obviously Shirahoshi is not docking with Vivi and Isa. That'd be crazy. And I don't think it's gonna be. I don't think it's the Sea Kings. Then I don't think it's Zunisha and the Sea Kings. Then I think that if this is the conversation, then all the ancient weapons are ships. And I like the Thousand Sunny conversation, because the reason why the Thousand Sunny was so big to me was the Klabotterman aspect. And I've talked about the Klabotterman with commands, right? When we think about Eni's lobby, the Going Merry came in and is just like, give me the command to like Luffy, and Luffy's like, all right, let's go. And when you think about what the Going Merry did the entire time, was it sacrificed itself for Luffy for the sake of adventure, because that's what Luffy wanted. Luffy just didn't know that was what his orders were doing to Mary. It was like, yo, I didn't know that you were a sentient object. I didn't know you were a Nakama like that. You know what I mean? I knew you were a Nakama, but not like like a live Nakama. You know what I mean? And so like when if the Mary were like had weapons and like could use it, and Luffy went like, yo, blast this shit, I think the Mary would, right? So I think if the Thousand Sunny has a Kabotterman, which canon, not canon, it does. The film Red also teased the sentience of it. I think sentience is one of those things we talked about. Big Mom and her ship literally is a sentient ship because her homie in it, right? And then Nell's thing had a face on it. We also have the legendary ship of the what's it called? The world government one. The Ox Bell, the Ox Lloyd, that ship. We don't know what that is. It's a legendary ship. Like, what are we talking about with all these ships? And is the three the ones that can dock? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe all the ships are one ship. Maybe they're components of each other. It could be that that's the case too.
Well, in my head, I'm thinking it's more of just, you could have like the Noah on the water with the Sea Kings protecting it, and then if Uranus controls the weather, then you can make sure that the ship sails safely. And then if Pluton is also there, and let's say Pluton, you know, can destroy everything, then you have a giant laser with you also that'll destroy anything that gets near you. And I guess that's, in my head, that might be kind of like the docking, like, because I think we think of it like really, really physically, like very literal, like they're literally hook, like connecting, you know what I mean, like kind of like in Thriller Bark. But I think it could just be like all of them work together kind of to be like one massive, like unstoppable, you know, adventure thing. Like Uranus might also be able to help the ship go through the sky, and like, you know what I mean. And so like then you can go underground with Pluton, you can go on the water or in the water or fly up, and nobody can hurt you because you have these giant lasers. You can control the weather so nobody, you know, nothing messes with your journey. The Sea Kings will make sure that no other things in the water mess with your ship. Like it could, like, I'm not saying that this is what it is, but it could be like Joy Boy's like, all right, like, I don't want anything stopping my adventure, you know, like, under any circumstances. So we're going to get all these powerful things to work together. And, you know.
No, you brought up I don't know if you meant it, but in there you said something. It could be that Uranus is just like a travel assistant type of thing, where a travel aid, not assistant. But like the reason why I like that is because a whole thing that we kind of don't frame this conversation is that, like, ancient weapon, like, yes, I said earlier is a face, but like, is Shirahoshi even a weapon? Are these ships weapons? Like, what does weapon even mean? Like, you fought the battle of, oh, Dax, a mole isn't a ship, and it's like, but like, the story was saying the ships aren't weapons either, right?
Yeah,
so it's like,
it's just gotta take you places. Like that's all that matters.
Like, and so like Frankie's has this whole discussion like, oh, or Tom, it's like, ships aren't weapons unless you make it. Oda called the Pluton an ancient weapon. Here we go. And then we have San Juan Wolf, the battleship, and it's like, all right, there's a person, you know what I mean? So like, the labels are very, very interesting. And something that I do like is the conversation of like, what if they're not just like straight up, like maybe they weren't like that. And one of the crazier things that, like, I haven't even mentioned this on my channel, but I've been thinking about it, is like, I made a Man Marked by Flame video with Tom, and you might have remembered that one where you know, you with Mass Deuce. I like that one, by the way. Shout out to that one.
Louis Arnault getting mentioned was a big boost.
Yes, yeah. Louis Arnault was a big mention for me for a different reason, but I 100% thought of you when that blew my mind when that came up. But with Tom was he had the blueprints to Pluton, and he gave them to his disciples, and Iceberg made his island like not like float, like it's now a ship. It can't sink, right? And it's like, you want to think that some form of that is rooted in what Pluton is. And then you also look at what Frankie's made, and people have come to the like, oh, he's making Gundams, he's mecha, so Pluton is like a mecha thing because that's what he saw. And so people are having that conversation. So we apply that to Frankie, we apply that to Iceberg, and then like with Tom, I like doing the same thing too. It's like, what about his sea train? Why isn't the sea train in the same conversation? That's what you did, right, with the mole thing. And I think that's one of my favorite aspects of that theory is Tom is the best person to, hey, like, we, you know, as far as I have the blueprints, this is my life dream, I made this. Wouldn't it make sense if it's kind of similar to what Pluton is? And that's where you went, right? And people kind of, I think that even to this day, when people bring up the mole theory, not that, you know, people haven't brought it up in my theories, not that like it's not relevant, but, you know, point is that back in the day when people brought up, that was something that they didn't even like, it's not on their forefront. That's like, yo, the sea train is huge. But what made the sea train the sea train? It wasn't really the train itself. It was the rails. The rails were fucking insane. And one of the things that people were like, okay, sure, you make a sea train. You make this thing that runs on water. Cool. But how is this gonna survive Sea Kings? And then that's when he's like, oh, the sound that the rails make will deter Sea Kings from attacking. And I'm like, wait, that's wait, whoa, what are we talking about with that one? That sounds like ancient weapon level counter thing. Why isn't that anti-Pluton, like a sound that deters Poseidon? Like, is that the rock paper scissors we're getting at? And what is the rail? The rail would be the travel aid that you were talking about. And when you think about it, right, if you were in control of the world, and you banned the ocean travel, what would you need? You need a road that connects everything. What if there is just like a sky road that is like monopolized, and that's what was over Lelucia, just like a sky train that just landed there? I don't know, but like the point is that something in what Tom did with that sea train has been like, there, like you did with the Pluton. There's something there you have to extrapolate, and it's there for Uranus, it's there for Poseidon, it's there for Pluton, and that rail has been like sitting in the back of my mind, and we got the rainbow. And the rainbow thing in Elbaf blew my mind, because when I read that, I was like, oh my god, this is what Oda's been like going towards. And then he said this rainbow made sounds. I was like, oh, this is it. It makes twinkle sounds. What are we talking about? This could be insane.
It's kind of tough for me because the Sea Stone does the same thing as the rails, right? Like both of them act as defenses, and so
sort of.
You know,
which
so
is
for me it's kind of tough. But well,
the sea stone.
One minute, and then we got to move on to the next question, or else we won't end in time.
The sea stones act as a defense, but they still attack the ships. That was what was said. It was like the sea stones are just like it thinks it's there, but if you stood there long enough, they would still get attacked. That's what I think Momonga was saying. That he was just like because they were in the calm belt, but then they still had like monster come at them, and he had to cut it or whatever. But it blends. The sea stone makes it the energy of the sea, so it's less noticeable. But straight up the sound of the rail.
But I guess by the same logic, if the train stopped, then they wouldn't be making the noise. So it's the same logic, I guess.
Except he was saying that it's like a deterrent. Like it's kind of like, and the reason why I'm saying I'm emphasizing that is it's sound based, like the voice. A command, like what is that sound, that frequency that he was talking about? How did he, because like how did he test that? How does he know that? What does that mean? Where did he learn this? Is that in the blueprints? What is, that's why I was like, that's like a super niche thing, that when everyone was at that courthouse, right, they're like, oh but this, oh but that, oh but this, and then the last thing he's like, it's gonna make a sound Sea Kings can't do. I was like, wait,
that's
wild.
It's like, I'm not trying to take away from it completely, but that's a pretty common thing even in our life to have like sound-based things that deter animals where we can't hear it, right? Like, like you have like mole actually like things that stop moles from coming near your yard. You literally stick them in the ground and it makes sounds to the ground. And so I guess for me, I in my mind, I think that's more of Oda just having fun, with it more so than anything serious. But
I agree with you, and that's honestly what you're saying is why I think of it even more, is because like when we look at Shirahoshi, the way her power was demonstrated and the way Conquer's Haki is demonstrated, it's like the sound when Luffy released it, it's like a sonar that was released, and then everyone just receives a command, right? And that's why it's like the way when Rayleigh entered in the Sabaody thing, it's like a similar vibe. And you're telling me that like a non-scientist, like that seems like something Vegapunk would want. That seems like something Vegapunk would need. That seems like something Vegapunk like didn't even have. You know what I mean? That's why I'm like, wait, what is this? Because I almost like, again, this isn't something I mentioned verbatim on my channel, but I've always been on like what's Ancient Kingdom technology, what's not, and what is Vegapunk, and where's the bridge, and what's separate. And even Vegapunk was like, oh, this West Blue scientist, 21 grams of soul. Like, he's also referencing other people. And then the Tom is the one linchpin because he Ancient Shipwright Guild. That's like one of the most massive things that still to this day connects us to Pluton. And Oda's just kind of like, we don't know about ancient shipwrights anymore. Who are they? We've never talked about them ever again outside of Tom. Where are they? Vegapunk hasn't mentioned them. We went to Fishman Island. They didn't mention them. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's probably Void Century info, right? So it's probably lost to most of history, I would imagine. Yeah.
And that's why that like sound-based, Sea King related, coming from Tom, Void Century stuff related to something Sea King, not Sea King, Pluton-esque because of blueprint stuff. Like that's why I'm like, and Vegapunk didn't have it. Like, what are we? This is an interesting one. It sounds like something that like Isa. You know, we just came off of that arc, and Isa's like hearing all this stuff, and now we have this another sound thing. So I would almost like, you know, every single arc there's probably like one random sound event that could be marked off, that someone could be like, each arc there was like a different thing that was like, whoa, what happened here, what is this? Shanks with Lord of the Coast, or you know, you go on every arc there's probably something. Shushu, people like thought that Shushu had Conqueror's Haki, right? Right, Shushu was the name of the Orange Town dog. Yeah. So,
but
whatever it is. Oh, that actually reminded me. Sorry, one last.
Well, we got to move on to the next question. We said we're going to end by 7, and it's 7:10, and we have multiple more questions. True, we don't have time. I'm sorry, everyone. There'll be another episode in the future if you were into it. But we're already past our time, and we got to get through the questions. So, unfortunately, but. Next question, because I think this is probably one that a lot of people are curious about, and Growth Stonks asked this. Again, Growth Stonks, I'm sorry that you got truncated. But do you think the government has Uranus, or what do you think their weapon is?
It's... Again, I think they're mirrors. I think, like... It could be that they want it, but here... Like, I guess here's, like, an example of what... I could mean. I made a video a long time ago saying like the Reverie and even the Davy back fights, and now we have the cleansing events. They kind of reminded me of the Olympics and how like the UN kind of like was supposed to start out as like the Olympics was originally like a peace treaty thing. Like you didn't fight and you met every 4 years to, you know, peacefully without war go through. That's what the Reverie sort of is. And then it's like what predated the Reverie? Why 4 years? What is Oda doing there? And then you go to like the Latin / Roman themes, thematics that Marriage-Wa has, rooted in romance, the dawn of Rome, and talking about that. Well,
that's interesting.
Predating that is the Greeks, and the Greeks had the ancient weapon names, right, of like Poseidon and Uranus and Pluton, whichever. And the Romans just changed the name. They took the same things and it's kind of like reclaimed it, remarketed it, and it's the same thing but like a different version. They kind of took some of the stories and changed them a little bit. Some of the characters like Hades became Pluto, but Hades used to be synonymous with the underworld. Hades and the underworld both being Hades, whereas Pluto and was it Nock? No, not Nyx. I forgot what the other there's like a god of it, and then there's Pluto, and then there's the name that they had for the underworld too. But they separated out, and so like the Romans kind of like took what the Greeks had and kind of created like, I'm gonna be a little rude here, but like a bastardized version of it. And it could be that was kind of what they did. Like they're like, okay, we have the ancient kingdom stuff, but how do we make our own? And they could have their like worst versions of it, or they could have like a mirrored version where it's like, you know, Zeus versus Jupiter, right? Like that's what we're looking at. There's like,
but I guess I'm curious, like, do you think like do you think it's the weapon but they just changed the name, or do you think it's a completely different thing? You know what I'm saying? Like
I think that what we might see is it's this. Okay, Uranus is a hard one. I'm gonna just say that they have it. But the other ones, I don't like. Poseidon's a hard one, but like basically what I was getting at was kind of like they have the same things, they just use them in the evil ways. So like the reputation that like of destroying and sinking the planet, that didn't come from the ancient weapons themselves. That came from like the world government utilization of it, and they blamed the other side of it. You know what I mean? And it could be that like there was 2 Uranuses in a way, and then one, or maybe they stole the Uranus or something like that. That's why Uranus is a hard one. But yeah, it's a little bit difficult because like basically I'm thinking of like Greek Roman flips and how does where they're the I mean like in the mythology it's not like the Romans thought that the Greek gods still existed, right? No, they just like took their gods and just renamed them. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But obviously we know with Poseidon that's not the case, right? There's no Neptune. There's King Neptune, but there's no like Neptune thing, right? I guess there's the Neptunians, they call that. That's a translation of it. But yeah, I think I want to say that they do have Uranus, even though what happened to Lucia is kind of the description of Pluton. But
yeah, well, for me, I mean, I'm surprised you didn't say it. I thought you were going to say it, but remember, in Ennis Lobby, has been my theory on it, so I don't have to go into the whole thing. If you guys want to, I have like an hour-long video on this on the main channel. But I mean, anti-Pluton, right? From Ennis Lobby, they've spent 15 years and they had cipher pole agents pretending to be galley law members, all in the effort to get the Pluton blueprints, and they didn't get them obviously because they got destroyed. But who do they have under their wing? Vegapunk, who created like fusion energy, right? He had like a nuclear reactor basically, and then York took part of it. And so in my mind, I'm like the hardest part of making like atomic bombs is the power of it, right? The actual nuclear power that they split the atom or whatever, right, to make the atom bomb, whatever the science is. Well, it's like, well, York was like, all right, so all I got to do is take some of that and blow it up. Like I can do that. Like that's not even a problem. So in my mind, I'm like that's the easiest thing. I mean, it could be that they have a giant machine that they put something into, but in my mind, I'm like, I mean, the whole idea with the Pluton blueprints was like they were trying to get another weapon, right? It seems like they didn't have one. Like the idea that like they were pushing is like, we need to have this because the real one's still out there, whatever. But it's like, well, they don't have the real one. We know that for a fact because it's at Wano. And like you said, this is a Pluton description. And I'm like, I think Vegapunk just made his best attempt. Like if he actually got the blueprints, he would have literally made a Pluton level thing. But what he made is probably like one small step down, or what York made using the power, right?
Yeah. And that's where anti-Pluton is a little interesting because like it was made by the ancient shipwrights. They had it, and so it kind of that would imply that the ancient shipwrights, like kind of similar with Vegapunk, were working underneath the world government after the fact, which could be plausible. Maybe they were, some context made them like realize like, oh, the real Pluton's a menace, we need to create a thing, or they were like tricked or whatever. Right. But what was interesting about that anti-Pluton thing, which is curious, was that in a way they kind of didn't care about it, because when you go back to it, the Gorosei got Spandam's call and we're like, hey bro, it's not that big of a deal, and the Spandam's like, no, give me the resources. And then they're like, all right bro, if you got it, we'll send you the resources, you got this. And then that's when Spandam's plan went to action. But the Gorosei were kind of like, they kind of took a step back right before Spandam took initiative. And they were like, it's fine as long as it's not like out there. You know what I mean? Like if it's not like, and so it was, that context kind of threw me off, but that could just be like early Oda stuff. I don't know.
Well, that just makes me think that they knew they had Vegapunk under their wing, so they were always going to have powerful weapons no matter what, right? Like whether we get this blueprint or not. So in their head, it was probably like, well, like it getting destroyed is a better outcome than it being out there. You know what I mean? Like of the three options where like it's still out there freely, it gets destroyed, or we get it, we're okay with either of the last two, right? Like that's probably what they like in my mind, because they were like, well, if those get destroyed, then all we gotta hope is that nobody gets the real one, because then we'll still win because we have Vegapunk, right? Like we're gonna have better. Like in my mind, that's it. It's like, look, hey, if they got destroyed, we're good. Like we just can't have them out there, and because we have Cipher Pole, in Galley Law, we kind of have a good feeling that they don't have the blueprints out there right now. Like they're hidden somewhere, so nobody's using them. And so they kind of probably knew, like, we're good right now, maybe.
And the other flip of that would be, because that was after Tom made the deal. So it could be that what Tom offered was good enough for them to be like, oh, wait, hold on. We may not need, if he's creating this for us, that's kind of like a Vegapunk situation, like you were describing. Yeah. Just without them needing to be involved. They're wait, he's gonna do it anyways. Hey, he's giving it to us, So that could be what they were like at as well. On top of what you're saying, it's like, well, as long as it's not in circulation, we're good. You know what I mean? And then if we're also getting Sea Train whatever component of the C train that was valuable to them, which we may not know, that could be, easily something that they were like, wait, this is as good as the ancient weapon. They just don't know it. They just don't realize how significant of a power this is that is being created for us. No, as far as that goes, there's many ways to spin that, but as far as the Uranus thing, it's either they have it or they have a bastardized version, but I feel like Uranus would be the one to have if they have it.
Yeah, well, for me, kind of like you said with Pluton destroys islands in a single blast, so I'm just like, this better not be Uranus, because then Oda ran out of ideas. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, man. You got one weapon that can do it. You had a whole arc about making a second one, and then you just have a third one. The Uranus does the same thing. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like Poseidon was cool. You got a whole new ability set, but
I would only like it if Pluton's like the previous thing where it's like the weapon description wasn't necessary. It was like a rumor, like a gossip thing about Luffy's a 8'8" man, like that kind of thing, So like, Pluton can blast the thing in one shot, which is in line with like my cloud theory thing, where it's like it still does that, just not like vaporize it like that, Yeah,
but I mean, but since we have Enies Lobby, I'm like, we know something like that used to exist, and so I'm like, I feel like it's Pluton. And we might actually touch on that here in just a second, because that was part of my video that people may have watched before this. So we're gonna touch on that in a second whenever we get to like Void Century stuff. But one other question that Growth Stonks asked, and this is part of like his theory, so he doesn't obviously, I can't really show the full theory in context here, but I thought you might like the theory or have some thoughts, so I just wanted to ask you. So a big part of his thought on this is that he thinks that weapon is going to be the Emerald City, or that the Emerald City is a weapon or something like that. Personally, I think the Emerald City's Alabasta, and it just dried out because it used to be like like the Amazon rainforest or something. And so that's like the emerald part.
I think we talked about that a long time ago.
But I guess I'm just curious whether what you think about that theory, or what you think of the Emerald City in the future. And I think a big part of his theory, just FYI, and Growth Songs, I'm sorry if this is wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is what you said. I know there's more to it, but whenever you watch the attack happen in the anime, it's like green at first and then red, which for me, I'm not, I always have a hard time with anime coloring stuff like that, like they might just, people have aura and all this kind of stuff, like it's hard for me to really pinpoint. I think the official coloring is just red. I think that came out like a week ago, but yeah, what are your thoughts?
Emerald City's hard because it's like a theory if it's even relevant, right? And I think Hidden, his videos coming to mind where he had an Emerald City video too, and we all three of us had talked about our thoughts about Emerald City at one point. But he was basically like, well, if on Jaya they said like X, Y, Z, and we got Skypiea and we know Laugh Tale and Emerald City was in the conversation, then it's like the third one's probably a real thing too, and possibly important. And if Skypiea, separate thing, right? And if we're talking about Emerald City, like Emerald City could be very interesting because, like you said, like I agree with you on Alabasta possibly being a completely different landscape in the past, Emerald being a green city, greenery. I think there's a real life example in our world where there's a place called like an Emerald City and it's just greenery. And that was both a romanticized version and like a historical version too. But I think as far as like Emerald City, it could be like not moon related, but like when they said like they want to go to the blue planet and like Fairy Verth, like that could be Emerald City stuff too. It could be Burka related. Like there's so many things that Emerald City could be that it's not. Like Laugh Tale's Laugh Tale. I think that's separate. I don't know if it's gonna be in line, but I think it's gonna be adjacent. And if I had to put my finger on it, right now I'm kind of leaning towards like Giants / like Skypian related rather than Alabasta, but Alabasta was like the OG thought. The Skypiea stuff, not Skypiea, not Skypian, sorry, Birkin related, like separating the sky races out. Like Emerald City could be something separate for them, and then what's his face? Like their Weatheria or something like that, like a version of that could be like their Emerald City, something like that. Or Elbaf had some kind of like version of it with like a hey, there's more Atom trees now. Maybe it's a place where like the multiple trees grew. Maybe it like Emerald City could easily be like, I don't know, like what Jaya with all the trees, the ancestor forest, you know, like various names for that, you know.
Yeah, like the thing for me is it was mentioned in the same breath as I think like Sky Islands in the One Piece, right? I think that's what Bellamy said, like those three things. And so I think like a lot of people think, well, it was mentioned in the same breath as Sky Island, so it might be Sky Island related. But then I can also, I could say like, well, it could also be a land, sea, and air thing where he mentioned one sky place. Maybe the One Piece is found like underwater, and then the Emerald City to be land level. Or maybe they are all sky related, and you think about how Skypiea, like they really worship like Verth because you could grow like normal plants on it, right? So going back to Emerald City is like, well, did they call it the Emerald City because Sky people weren't used to finding like lush, you know, forests and stuff like that? So the first one they found, they called the Emerald City because it was just like green was everywhere and they weren't used to it. Like there's like so many different ways you could break it down that I feel like it's one of those things where it's kind of a crapshoot for me. You know what I mean? Like, like any theory I feel like could end up being right about the Emerald City. Like I like the one thing I'll say is I do feel like it's definitely like a place, but that place just might not exist anymore, right? Like we said with Alabasta, like that to me that's the most likely situation.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this about Laughtail per se, but the really ironic thing that I think like happens like real world also is it could also be like Emerald City and Skypiea, maybe they were referring to the same place. And you'd want, if that was the case, you'd want Laughtail to be the same thing. And what I mean by that is it could be all the same place, but now they're not the same place, which is kind of the context of the ancient kingdom, right? Like it was all like there was a giant continents or continents that were connected, and now they're not. How are they separated? Well, how they were separated. Well, we have an island that was shot up into the sky. Like there's Oda has all the tools to separate them out, land, sea, and air, just like you said. And the irony could be that they were separated land, sea, and air. And it could be super ironic that maybe the situation had it that now they're all in the same place and we just don't know. It could be that ironic.
Yeah.
That could be why Roger laughed at Laughtail. He's like, wait a second. This is the same place as, wait a second, you know what I mean? It could be something like that.
Yeah, like what if the Emerald City is like a hidden green island in the sky and that's also where the One Piece is and it's all, you know, they're all baked into one.
Yeah. And like the funny thing was like the super ironic thing was that like again, this isn't what I mean by this, but this is just like a hyperbole to explain what I'm saying is like Roger could be looking at it and he's like, you're telling me that all the places I visited, my entire circumnavigation of the globe, this used to all just be neighbors, like the walking distance, like that. You know how funny that'd be? Like my life's mission was to walk down the street back in the day, you know what I mean? Like Joy Boy just like walk down, oh look, there's Alabasta, oh look, there's Dressrosa, oh look, there's Fishman Island, oh, and it's all just right next to each other. You're telling me that they were all just right next to each other? And like that could be super hilarious, and that could be the breaking up that happened, that could be the spreading out that happened. We have continent pullers, that is like an actual thing that existed apparently. So as far like I'm obviously I'm hyperbolizing what I'm saying, but like some form of continent breaking and separation did happen apparently, and it could be that way. And that would be kind of funny, you know. Imagine your life missing. Oh man, I'm gonna search the whole world. Turn out that this was not the whole world. Most of the world was sunk. Joy Boy saw way more than you did. You know what I mean? That'd be. I would laugh pretty hard too. Yeah,
no, for sure. Well, you know, I guess now that we're talking about Void Century, you know, era stuff or what might have happened, I think it's time to get to kind of one of the biggest questions here. And I do need to end this in 10 minutes for sure, because I have to go to the store and they close at 8, and so I just need enough time to do that. So, But so Kush Daddy here asked a question that I already had prepped, but I figured I would give Kush Daddy the credit here. What do you think the original purpose or the origin of the ancient weapons actually are? And that goes back to what I was saying. Like, do you think they were all made in tandem and all that kind of stuff? That might be, you know, a way to look at it. But like, you know, did somebody make Pluton planning to blow stuff up, or did they make it because they needed to defend themselves against blowing someone up? Or is it like Frankie, where they just made it because, you know, it's fun to just make stuff that blows stuff up? You know what I'm saying? And then for Poseidon, I don't even know how that happens. You know, like I you know, we talked about it a little bit, like the lineage factor stuff, but like, how do you even start with like, hey, I want to give you the power to control every Sea King? You know what I mean? Like, where does that even? Why does that start? How does that? I'm sure every fishman would love to do that. You know, how do they divvy out how that works? And then, I mean, we don't even know how Uranus really works yet, but I think a lot of people think it's like weather control. And for me, I think we actually have a lot of hints towards that with Vegapunk, right? Like, his whole goal was changing the weather on his home island, and then he made the aircon at Egghead. And you talked a little bit earlier about like the sea beast kind of being like Poseidon, right? Because he could control all the sea beasts. Well, we also had the aircon there that controlled the weather, so you kind of had like a little bit of Poseidon, a little bit of Uranus, and then you're like, well, where's Pluton at? That's the mother flame, in my opinion. That going back to what we were talking about with you know, the weapon over Lelucia. It's like Vegapunk probably made baby versions of all three, and Oda just didn't make it as overt as the Poseidon one was. But yeah, just what do you think the origin of them were? Like, who did it, and what were they thinking at the time?
Yeah, so I mean, this conversation is kind of disjointed because there's separate thoughts. But one video comes, it's actually a short, I think, that I made that a long time ago. I think this is on Onigashima. It was the conversation around the naming scheme of what we're talking about here. The fact that, like, why were they named this group, right? And where have we seen this before? Well, Kaido, all the people they have, like, their commanders are just, you know, wildfire, plague, you know, like the three calamities, right? And then now the three gods and their associated Joy Boys. So the way I looked at it was like, these are just the commanders of Joy Boy's crew. And commanders of what? Well, maybe it's kind of like you mix Blackbeard a little bit into this, where it's like he has Titanic commanders and they each have their own ship. So maybe the ship is like what the ancient weapon ended up being, and the commander controller is like the person who, you know, what's it called? Is underneath Joy Boy. As far as like what the purpose is, or what the original purpose was, I'm like, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, you have a whole philosophical debate on it, but I think that, like, okay, Frankie's situation, right? Created a bunch of things to blow stuff up, but it was also like, I think he specifically said like these are protective. But the thing is, when you create something to protect, it could also be used to attack. It's protecting is subjective because you're attacking at the same time, or you're defending yourself against an attack, which could be offensive, right? And offense is the greatest defense, or, you know, depending on how you play sports, you could your methodology comes into play here. But when it comes to like what we're looking at here, the context there was ships. And Tom was saying, like, hey, like, the difference between a good ship and a bad ship is just who's piloting it, the flag that you fly. And easily, you could look at Whitebeard's fleet of ships, and if you're associated with Whitebeard, oh, that's a great thing. If you're a world government and you see a Whitebeard ship or a red-haired ship flying up, oh man, you wish you were not a fodder in the Navy that day, right? Like, that's kind of what it is. You see Whitebeard ship coming out and you're like, that's the Moby Dick. That's who's commanding that? Whitebeard, you know what I mean? And like, the fear that ship instills is crazy. And like, what if the ship could actually do something? Then it could have like the notoriety that we're talking about, similar to like the Man Marked by Flames. Like, we don't know per se if it's the person or the ship, but like what's associated with that whole thing is that whirlpools come around the ship as it sails to the ocean. What is that? Is that the person or is this ship? That could be like a ship that creates whirlpools. That's wild. We could be talking about like an ancient weapon-esque like situation there. So if I were to boil down where I'm at right now with the ancient weapons, I think that like the weapons that the world government first criminalized, that they labeled Joy Boy as the first pirate, I think it's ships. I think ships were the tool that made a pirate because they were adventurers. What were their tools? The ships. So what did they criminalize? They criminalized traveling. So the weapon was traveling. And so I think that all the ancient weapons are some form of travel. Clouds.
You think about Noland, right? He had to ask for permission like to travel. So you kind of know already, like they didn't want people out in the ocean automatically, right?
Yeah. And like you think about like why Wano is like the world government doesn't intervene with Wano. They just let that pressure cook. Why? Yeah. Because they're isolated.
Yeah,
they didn't
go nowhere.
Yeah, they're like, okay, wait, hold on. The samurais, they're in there. We know this. So
it's interesting to think about the sea train again, because that was like, oh, okay, well now they're really traveling. You know, it's like, okay, now they're really getting around. We got to make sure we are in charge of this, or like we have a leg up on this. But like Water 7 obviously still benefited and made a lot of money from it, and all, like obviously. But the government's like, okay, we need to at least, you know, like have a little bit of like bureaucracy here. Like we need to make sure, you know, we have a little bit of tabs on what's going on, and we should be able to use it if we want to. Like they're like, you're not using this unless we're letting you use it, right?
And in that conversation about the sea train, it's like it was literally like a quid pro quo, where it's like we're having a conversation about ancient weapons. The man who has it decided to make a sea train. That sea train was enough to goad the world government to be like, all right, you don't need to be executed. We want that. We'll give you 10 years too. 10 years is a long ass time. They gave Tom 10 years funding, whatever. Iceberg also like ingrained himself into the world government. Like he has a lot of power that they had to infiltrate with Lucci, because he was that powerful that they had to do all that. They had to send 5 of their greatest spies to go in there, because Iceberg controlled the sea trains and like you're saying, the bureaucracy around it, the maintenance, everything. So that's how powerful that sea train was, and that's how much they wanted it. Literally, they were jumping. They were like, wait a second, you're telling me we could make ships obsolete? That's kind of a great ass thing right now. You're telling me that this also deters sea kings? That's also, so hey, Poseidon's rumor is sea king, so we're creating something that dissolves that. That's cool, you know what I mean? So I feel like travel was the weapon. Joy Boy being the first pirate that circumnavigated the globe, went to all the islands, did probably log post stuff, created a map that people could follow, all that stuff. That's the criminal activity. They criminalized Roger for traveling. They criminalized everybody, you know what I mean? For the maps, poneglyphs, everything.
Do you think Pluton was Joy Boy's ship?
See that, and that's where it's hard, because you remember the thumbnail that I had with that video where it's like Joy Boy riding on a cloud and it's super sick. It's like Wukong-esque stuff, you know, Nimbus from Goku.
Goku, yep.
And it feels right. It feels cool. I think like Nami. I think a lot of people brought up Nami in that thing because she has the staff. She's given a lot of Wukong motifs as well. She has Zeus. And it could be that like if Poseidon is the current controller and like Vivi/Lily was a previous controller of Uranus or Pluton in this conversation, Momo controller of Zunisha in itself is a form of travel. So like we're looking at all these things where it's like I think that maybe it's kind of like the Blackbeard situation where they had Titanic commanders. Those Titanic commanders' names were given God names. Was it Joybu who gave them names, or is it some other people? That's the thing. Like, did Kaido ever be like, you are king of... No, he just said he called them king, right? Or was it the Beast Pirates that called them the Wildfire Plague and the Calamities? Like, that's where it's a little interesting, who named what. Luffy's famously not great at naming things, but also, when I made another video on this, technically, the Straw Hats didn't name themselves in the world's eyes. Smoker did. Smoker was the first person that reported to the Navy that these are the Straw Hat Pirates. Prior to that, they were the Straw Hat Gang. And it's like a very small discrepancy because they didn't have a bounty associated with the pirates yet. It was just Luffy who had a thing, and then like, wait, who's this guy? Oh, Zoro has a bounty. Later on, Sanji got a thing, and then once Smoker called him, and they're the Straw Hat Pirates. They get a bounty. Blah blah. That was Alabasta, and then after that, while they were in Skypiea, the Straw Hats called themselves. Whoa, we're gonna have the Straw Hat Pirate official meeting. That was the first time Oda said that. Straw Hat Pirates said by Luffy, and that was the first volume that Oda officially named them, grouped them in the volume as the Straw Hat Pirates. Prior to that, they were not the Straw Hat Pirates in the volumes. So I think it was like 20 volumes or like 5 years, 6 years. There was no Straw Hat Pirates in the volume. So the table of context before it, when you see like Fisherman Pirates or whatever, Beast Pirates, you have all that now in the volumes. The first 20 volumes did not have the Straw Hat Pirates. It was just separately listed, all this stuff. And then I think it's chapter what is Skypiea, like
200 something.
Yeah, like 255, 256, that volume, that's the first time Straw Hat Pirates thing. And that lines up when Smoker said it. So it could be also one of those things where these names, the ancient weapon names, they weren't them. And when you think about One Piece, Roger didn't name it. We don't even know if Joy Boy named it that. That's a name that just kind of like spawned. Who came up with that name, you know? So that's another thing.
Well, Roger did say, "I wonder who will find it." The One Piece after they left. So I don't know.
No, but the world was calling it so like he
but
said.
But I think that was the same night though.
No. It's chapter 967. So this is
okay. We got to wrap it up very soon. Like I'm talking 30 seconds. Par, I did want to ask you one other thing. Did you watch Codename Kids Next Door?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then I have a very important question to end this with that I need answered. How long would it take the Codename Kids Next Door crew to find the One Piece?
Oh, we're talking about Mr.
We're talking about Nigel Uno Piece.
Yeah,
we're talking about Lucky Roo's kid, Mr. 2. Or number 2, sorry, not Mr.
I said
2.
that recently. There's a guy who looks like in Elbaf who looks like 2, but number 2.
Is there?
Yeah, one of the giants. He just has the same hat, like goggle hat thing in the last chapter.
Oh,
like
I know who you're talking about. It's the guy who shot the guns in Egghead. He had like the pistols, and he was like poo poo like this.
Oh yeah, probably. I might not have noticed him before, but in the banquet, he's like on the left side. I'm like, wait, that's from Kid. This is that guy. This is him.
Yeah, that's number 2.
Yeah, number 2.
So how long? Oh, before or after Luffy? Like who takes more or less time? Nigel Uno or Luffy? Who's winning?
Oh, they get there first. Luffy's not even trying, bro. Luffy's not even trying. Yeah. They would get there first. Easily.
I agree. Yeah, Nigel Uno. You don't mess with that guy. Nigel Uno. I don't know all their names, but. This is the original East Blue 5 right here.
Abigail, I forgot the other names too, but Codename Kids Next Door, one of my favorites.
Somebody asked this in the Discord, not for you. They just randomly put it in there. Who was it? Was it Vex? I can't remember. Vex or Birch or somebody in my Discord randomly posted that, and I was just like cracking up. Like I saw it right as I was driving away from somewhere, and I just spent the whole drive thinking about this question. So that's why I had to ask. Because I'm
it's a good,
it's a Lucky Roo number 2. I mean, that's just crazy, you know.
One of the best storylines for a kid's show too. It was crazy.
Right? Such a good show. Oh, and the way it ended and everything, it's insane. Just overall fantastic. The way that like era of cartoons ended was a lot of them at least was great. Like a lot of them had really good endings, better than a lot of
insanity.
Anime.
Yes, 100%. They knew how to finish.
But Par, thank you so much, bro. We cooked, and it was funny because you and I both set the 7 o'clock time limit. We're here at 7:43, but that leaves me just enough time to get to the store, so that's fine, and I can watch the Cavs.
Sorry about that.
Which I know you don't watch basketball, but I just gotta say the Cleveland Cavaliers are the one of the best teams in NBA history.
Prime time.
They're 32-4.
Damn! Holy.
Yep. We just beat the 30-5 Thunder last night, who are the second best team. So we are.
That's crazy.
We are sitting. We have like the I think like the 4th highest winning percentage at this point in the season of any team ever. So like it's pretty crazy.
Damn, we gotta place your bets.
I know. Well, I was in your neck of the woods earlier this season to watch them play the Knicks.
Oh right, yeah.
And we won.
That's awesome.
I might be back. We play at New York again at the end of the season, so we'll see.
Okay.
Or we might play in the playoffs, and that'll be easier. But
yeah, let me know.
But Par, you got anything to say to the people? Any parting words?
No, just I think like I said this when I showed up at the Reverie 2 during my extended continuing hiatus, that I just appreciate the community. I appreciate Dak, you reaching out, and just your community, also a lot of your viewers, and just the reception of everyone and patience to just being here and allowing me to just take a break and then come back and hopefully make content again. And I'm just excited to have these conversations. As you guys can see, like, I'm still, like, you sit me down for One Piece, I'm extending the conversation. We schedule out 2 hours, I'm talking for 4.
I mean, so, you guys saw how many times I'm like, all right, Par, we got to move on. But you also saw how many times I was like, all right, I'm just going to let him keep cooking because for one thing, I mean, I love chopping it up with you about One Piece, but I also know, people haven't heard from you in a while, man. So, like, I'm sure you got a lot to say. You know what I'm saying? So,
no, I haven't heard from me in a while, too. This is probably the first time I've referenced, like, outside of my, like, chapter reactions, like, other chapters, like, 160, whatever. I'm like, damn, I remember the chapters like that. That's crazy. And, I haven't talked about One Piece, like, in probably, like, 2 weeks-ish since my last stream. So,
it's like riding a bike.
It's like riding a bike for me, so... but yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for bringing me on to this, and I'm super happy and proud of you, Dak, for keeping this consistent. Also, just love to see it. Love to see it.
Oh, appreciate it, man. It hasn't been easy. I'll be honest. It's not like whenever you and I mean, Hidden's taken some breaks. A lot of people have taken breaks. I'm like, I feel it, guys. I'm there. I mean, I'm kind of taking a little bit of a break now, like not seriously, but it's January and. The RPM drops in January and February, so I'm like, if there was a time for me to not try as hard, it's now. And I don't want that to sound. Try as hard is probably not a good way to put it. Obviously, we're still trying to make good content, but I'm saving my best ideas, or I'm working on my biggest videos. I'll do those in a couple months. You know what I mean? I'll go a little bit easy for now. So, but yeah, dude, seriously, thank you so much, Par. It was a great discussion, and everybody else who's watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're going to be doing these at least for every chapter. Again, it might not be Par every time, but I'm going to be having somebody on here for every chapter and discussions like this where we do a random ancient weapons discussion. I got one in the future that I want to talk about God Valley. I got all sorts of them. So we got lots of videos coming, and yeah, make sure you guys check out Par. I still see people are showing out for your live reactions. You still got lots of numbers, so. The community's still there for sure. So love it.
Yeah.
But all right, guys, y'all have a good one. See you next time. Peace.